The trial of Shawn "Diddy" Combs, once one of the most powerful figures in the entertainment industry, has become a lightning rod for national discourse on power, silence, and complicity. As proceedings commence in New York City, the spotlight unexpectedly shifted to a figure long in the shadows, Janice Combs, the mother of the accused. Her recent public statement, initially seen as a mother's plea for understanding, has revealed layers of implication that have shocked both public and legal communities. In a single line, "I've seen what the world hasn't, and I've warned Shawn." Janice cracked open a narrative long buried under celebrity and influence. Her words have reframed the trial, not only focusing on Diddy's alleged crimes, but also on the cultural and familial structures that may have enabled them. The revelations suggest that Janice may have had prior knowledge of her son's behaviors, a notion that casts her not merely as a grieving parent, but potentially as a witness, willing or not, to a deeply troubling legacy. What follows in this analysis is a detailed unpacking of Janice Combs' statement, her historical context with Diddy, and how her late-stage involvement might not only impact the legal outcome, but also challenge long-held perceptions about loyalty, motherhood, and justice in the world of celebrity. Before the headlines, before the raids, and long before the courtroom filled with whispers of scandal, there was a single mother from Harlem, Janice Combs, trying to protect her son from a world that didn't care about boys like him. After her husband was gunned down when Shawn was just 2 years old, Janice raised him with quiet determination. She was a model, a teacher's assistant, but most of all, she was a believer. She believed her son could rise above the violence, above the poverty. And for a while, it seemed like he did. When Diddy broke into the music scene in the 90s, Janice stood proudly beside him. Her face shone on red carpets, her voice echoed in interviews, always praising her son's ambition, his brilliance. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. As Bad Boy Records blew up, as Diddy's lifestyle morphed from Harlem hustle to global extravagance, Janice's presence began to fade. No more red carpets, no more birthday appearances, no more quiet smiles behind her superstar son. It wasn't sudden, but it was noticeable, and people close to the family saw it. A former employee remembered Janice showing up to one of Diddy's lavish events uninvited. She stayed just 20 minutes, barely spoke to anyone, and left without saying goodbye. There were cameras, half-dressed women, men who watched from the shadows. And Janice? She sat in a corner, visibly uncomfortable. That night, she vanished from his world of champagne and spotlight. Around 2005, her absence became complete. No more interviews, no public praise. It was like she had drawn a line, a quiet rebellion against the man her son had become. Yet, she never spoke out. Not then. Not through the lawsuits, the whispers, or the chaos. Only silence. But silence, as the world would soon learn, can be loud. Years later, in a resurfaced 2007 interview, she was asked if she worried about her son. Janice laughed, tight, forced, and said, "I used to, but now, I just pray." That one sentence carried decades of concern. Behind closed doors, the relationship between mother and son had become distant. He provided for her financially, yes, but emotionally, there was a growing canyon. A former chef from Diddy's loss, Angela's home, said Janice would visit, eat dinner, then leave early, never staying long. She couldn't watch what he was becoming, the chef said. And now, in the wake of her recent public statement, the pieces began to connect. "I've seen what the world hasn't, and I warned Shawn." That one line, buried deep in a letter meant to defend, tore the silence apart. It wasn't just a defense. It was a warning. It was history resurfaced. Because those who knew her knew Janice had seen the signs, the parties, the girls, the rumors, and that she had tried in her way to sound the alarm. But she wasn't heard, or worse, ignored. In that context, her withdrawal makes sense. It wasn't just discomfort, it was something closer to mourning. The mother who once prayed for her son's rise now watched, powerless, as the empire he built began to rot from within. This wasn't just a story about a mogul on trial. This was about a mother who saw it coming and left the stage before the curtain fell. And what she saw may change everything. As Diddy's public persona ballooned into a global brand, an empire spanning music, fashion, spirits, and reality television, what also grew was an invisible infrastructure of silence, control, and strategic legal intimidation. This wasn't just about protecting a reputation, it was about shielding an entire machinery where the currency wasn't just money, but loyalty, fear, and access. And at the edge of this machinery stood Janice Combs, not a formal employee, not an executive, but a woman whose life, comfort, and privacy were increasingly funded by the very man she had once raised to believe in dreams. By the early 2000s, Diddy's team had become notorious in the industry for its aggressive tactics. NDAs were the norm. Threats of defamation suits were whispered deterrents, and private investigators worked behind the scenes to manage leaks. To be in his orbit was to play by a set of unspoken rules, and Janice, it seemed, was no exception. Though she never signed an official contract, multiple sources from inside Combs Enterprises confirmed that Janice received financial perks tied directly to Diddy's businesses. Luxury real estate in New Jersey, a generous monthly allowance, first-class travel. It all came through the empire. And that made her vulnerable. One former accountant put it bluntly, she wasn't staff, but she was on the books. This financial dependency wove a silent net. Speaking out would not only threaten her lifestyle, it could trigger a total collapse of the comfortable distance she'd maintained from her son's increasingly controversial behavior. And more than once, Janice reportedly considered stepping forward. In 2011, rumors swirled that she had started drafting a memoir, but the project vanished overnight. Insiders now allege it was buried under a storm of legal threats. One close family friend recounted a conversation with Janice around that time. She said, "I tried once. They made it clear, if I go public, it'll ruin everything." Her voice, the friend remembered, was shaking. But the silencing wasn't just legal. It was deeply emotional. Diddy, according to multiple sources, had cultivated a culture that ran on guilt and psychological leverage. He reminded people, employees, partners, even family, who signed their checks, who gave them a life. One therapist who had treated a former Combs employee described the environment as an emotional trap masquerading as gratitude. For Janice, the weight was doubled. She wasn't just dealing with a boss, she was dealing with her son. To admit what he might be doing wasn't just hard, it was soul-breaking. The shift in their relationship became visible in small, consistent ways. She stopped attending public events. Her comments in interviews became rare, and when they did surface, they were cryptic. She once described Diddy's lifestyle as too fast and followed it with a line that has since taken on chilling weight. "I just pray." It was as if she had stepped back not just out of disagreement, but out of quiet resignation. And yet, behind the scenes, she was watching, observing, carrying the burden of knowledge she didn't feel safe enough to share. Then came the 2003 party in Miami, a turning point many close to the family now point to as the moment Janice fully grasped the darkness she was up against. She had been invited to what was framed as a celebratory weekend at a private estate. Diddy often brought family to such events, using the veneer of legitimacy to cover what was quickly becoming a pattern of high-security, high-stakes indulgence. That night, Janice arrived with a friend. At first, it was nothing unusual. Celebrities, fine dining, well-dressed staff. But what she saw later in the evening changed everything. According to a former Bad Boy employee, Janice witnessed a young woman, barely dressed, visibly anxious, being escorted down a hallway by 2 assistants. Alarmed, she reportedly asked a staffer, "Why does she look scared?" The answer was cold, robotic. "Don't ask questions, just enjoy the party." Janice left immediately. She didn't say goodbye to her son. She didn't wait for the chauffeured car. She called her own ride and vanished into the night. She never attended another event of his again. That moment haunted her. And years later, it would resurface in the form of journal entries seized during the federal investigation. In one entry dated August 2017, she wrote, "He told me about the tunnels. I thought he was joking. I don't think he is." The rest of the page painted a disturbing picture. Girls who looked scared, people who wouldn't speak, and a system so powerful it kept everyone quiet, including her. She ended the entry with a line that prosecutors now hold as emotional evidence. "If what he's doing is real, I've failed." But Janice's silence wasn't complicity in the traditional sense. It was a silence born of fear, guilt, and the helplessness that comes when your child becomes the very monster you tried to shield them from. Speaking out meant not just confronting her son. It meant dismantling the world he had built around both of them, so she didn't. Until now. The trial, the testimonies, and especially Cassie Ventura's chilling account of being monitored, drugged, and controlled became the final trigger. When Cassie told the court that Janice had seen her at one of the parties, had seen the girls, and said nothing, everything changed. Janice reportedly broke down that night, called her lawyer in tears, and said, "I can't keep pretending anymore." And from that moment on, the walls around her began to crumble. This wasn't just about legal exposure anymore. It was about reckoning, about a woman who had carried too many secrets for too long. And when she finally said, "I warned him, I begged him, but he wouldn't stop," it wasn't just a line in a statement. It was a key that unlocked a hidden history, a history of control, manipulation, and one mother's painful awakening to the monster her son had become. The aftermath of silence is rarely immediate, but when it comes, it hits like a landslide. And for Janice Combs, the storm had been building for years. Her son wasn't just facing a legal battle. He was confronting a reckoning decades in the making. And Janice, long seen as the dignified, supportive mother, now stood at the crossroads of heartbreak and accountability. After years of distance, whispers, and internal conflict, she was no longer a background figure. She had become a central piece of the puzzle, one that might explain not just what happened, but how it was allowed to continue for so long. The toll this has taken on her personally is evident in every word of her statement, every page of her journal, every strained interaction recounted by insiders. The image of a mother clinging to her faith, praying for her son while trying to make sense of what he'd become, has shifted. Now she's a woman in crisis, emotionally shattered, spiritually torn, and socially isolated. As her statement began circulating online, public reaction was swift and brutal. Comments flooded social media. "If she knew and did nothing, she's part of the problem," one post read. Others questioned how a mother could remain silent while young women were allegedly abused in plain sight. And yet, beneath the backlash, was a quieter, more haunting question. What would it take for a mother to finally break? Her decision to speak out, even obliquely, has come at a cost. Friends close to the Combs family say Janice now lives in near-complete seclusion. Once a woman who beamed at awards, shows, and posed on red carpets beside her superstar son, she now avoids cameras entirely. One family insider described her current life as haunted and hesitant, each step measured, each phone call carefully screened. The weight of guilt, they say, has changed her, not just because of what Diddy is accused of, but because of what she didn't do when she might have made a difference. Health-wise, those around her are worried. Sources report that Janice has undergone bouts of anxiety, sleeplessness, and emotional withdrawal since the trial began. She's reportedly seeing a therapist and has cut ties with several longtime friends, particularly those still connected to the entertainment world. And perhaps most tellingly, she no longer refers to her son by his nickname. She just says Shawn now, one confidant noted, as if she's trying to separate herself from the brand, from the myth. Professionally, though Janice wasn't a public figure in the traditional sense, the fallout has still left a mark. Charities she once supported have quietly removed her from their advisory boards. Lifestyle brands that once boasted about her connection to Diddy have scrubbed mentions of her from their websites. It's a quiet erasure, one that reflects the entertainment industry's instinct to distance itself from controversy, even if that controversy is familial. The symbolic weight of a mother losing her place in a world she once celebrated is devastating. She didn't just lose her son to the system. She lost the version of herself that stood by him through it all. But the emotional toll isn't hers alone. The public response to Janice's statement has created ripples far beyond her immediate circle. People are re-examining past interviews, red carpet moments, even old photos, searching for signs, clues that she may have known, may have been trying to say something all along. A clip from 2005 recently resurfaced where Janice appears stiff during a party segment. She says nothing controversial, but her body language, once seen as reserved, now reads as alarmed. Context changes everything, and now every silence, every smile, every walk-off is being interpreted through the lens of what came after. Even inside the courtroom, the mention of her name carries weight. When Cassie Ventura testified and claimed that Janice had seen the girls, had seen the fear and said nothing, the entire energy in the room shifted. Janice wasn't present that day, but she didn't have to be. Her absence spoke louder than words. Journalists reported that some members of the jury visibly reacted. A woman who had once been protected by her son's fame was now being exposed as a witness to his darkest moments. Yet, despite the public judgment, many legal experts caution against jumping to conclusions. Janice, they argue, was in an impossible position, trapped by emotional loyalty, financial dependence, and psychological fear. It's one thing to demand action from a bystander. It's another to expect it from a mother, especially one whose life had been molded, funded, and overshadowed by her son's empire. As one prosecutor put it, if even his own mother couldn't confront him, what hope did the rest of his victims have? Still, there's a growing sense that Janice's public shift, from silent supporter to reluctant whistleblower, may open the door for others. Already, whispers of former staff members, assistants, and ex-partners preparing to testify have begun circulating, and many of them point to Janice's statement as the spark. "If she can speak, we can too," one anonymous source told a reporter. The dam is cracking, and Janice's voice, weary and weathered, may be the first drop of truth to break it open. There's also a deeper, more emotional layer to this moment, one that cuts through legal analysis and internet outrage. It's the heartbreak of a mother watching her child fall, not by accident, but by design. Watching him build a world that rewarded dominance, secrecy, and silence. Watching for years as he slipped further from the boy she raised to the man, now sitting behind bars. That kind of grief doesn't show up in headlines. It shows up in private journal entries, in phone calls filled with quiet sobs, in the echo of a name no longer said aloud. And so Janice Combs finds herself in a space few mothers ever imagine, caught between the love that shaped a life and the truth that might destroy it. As the trial moves forward, her role will likely expand. Prosecutors are circling, witness lists are growing, and the nation is watching. But behind every development is a woman still trying to understand where everything went wrong, a mother still asking herself if she could have done more, a woman who once stood in the spotlight, now standing in the shadow of her son's reckoning. For years, Janice Combs said nothing. She remained in the background, quiet, composed, and unshakably loyal in the public eye. But silence, especially when wrapped in fear and guilt, doesn't last forever. When she finally spoke, she didn't shout or accuse. She didn't offer excuses or play the role of the oblivious mother. Instead, she dropped a single sentence, one that shattered everything. I warned him, I begged him, but he wouldn't stop. In that moment, the courtroom saga of Shawn Diddy Combs transformed into something larger, a cultural confrontation with the cost of silence and the weight of a mother's regret. What made Janice's words so powerful wasn't just what she said. It was the fact that she said them at all. For decades, she had lived under the weight of her son's empire, benefiting from it but also suffocated by it. And when the evidence finally became impossible to ignore, testimonies, videos, journals, even Cassie Ventura's harrowing courtroom recollections, it wasn't the legal team or the press that made her break. It was the realization that her silence might have made her complicit. And that guilt, as she would later tell her attorney through tears, was unbearable. Behind closed doors, Janice had already been unraveling. The phone call leaked from Diddy's monitored jail line confirmed as much. At first he was casual, even joking, but when she told him plainly, "You built this," something snapped. He lashed out, but Janice didn't back down. "You think you're bigger than God?" she said, her voice low and trembling. "But even he's not looking out for you now." And then, perhaps the most damning admission of all, "I've told them everything." That one sentence echoed far beyond that prison wall. It sent prosecutors into a flurry, because it meant she was cooperating or at the very least ready to. Within days, federal investigators had filed for access to her personal journals, emails, and records. Most of it was mundane, but hidden in one leather-bound book dated 2017 was a page that changed everything. "He told me about the tunnels," Janice had written. "I thought he was joking. I don't think he is." And further down the page, a chilling confession. "These girls, they're so young. They look scared. But no one says anything. I think they're afraid of him. I am too." For prosecutors, it was the emotional punch they needed to show that knowledge of abuse didn't just exist in rumor or second-hand whispers. It lived inside the walls of Diddy's own family. And for the public, it was a gut-wrenching read, a glimpse into a mother's slow realization that the man she had raised, protected and defended, might have crossed every line imaginable. Now, with Janice preparing to testify under sealed conditions, the stakes have shifted again. It won't be a public spectacle, no cameras, no courtroom sketches. But her words, transcribed and entered into record, could become the most devastating evidence yet. Because she wasn't a bystander. She was inside his world, close enough to see what others didn't, honest enough to admit what she ignored for too long. According to one source close to the case, Janice will confirm what happened at the 2003 Miami party. She will talk about the young woman, the fear in her eyes, the assistants who said nothing, and the moment she walked out without looking back. She will speak on the tunnels, the parties, the fear that hung over Diddy's inner circle like a dark cloud. But more than anything, she will speak on the man her son became, and how long she pretended not to see it. For victims and advocates, this is the moment they've waited for. Not just a conviction, but recognition from someone who once benefited from the system that protected Diddy. Janice's testimony may not undo the pain suffered by those who lived through the worst of it, but it may offer something else: validation. The kind that only comes when someone who had the power to stay silent finally decides not to. "She's doing this for the other victims," said one insider familiar with her legal team. "She knows she can't undo the past, but she's trying to make it right. And that, more than any legal outcome, is what's changing the narrative. Because Janice's voice carries more than facts. It carries emotion, betrayal, grief, and perhaps most surprisingly, hope. When a mother testifies against her own son, it doesn't just fracture a family. It shatters the illusion that fame can excuse anything. It sends a message that no one is too powerful to be held accountable, not even by their own blood. And for others still trapped in systems of abuse, it's a sign that there is a way forward. That the truth, even when spoken late, still matters. The ripple effects are already being felt. Multiple former assistants and insiders have reportedly expressed willingness to cooperate. The silence is breaking. The dam, once held together by fear and NDAs, is cracking under the weight of one mother's confession. And the industry, long accustomed to protecting its own, is watching closely. Because if Diddy, one of the most untouchable figures in music, can be brought down by the voice of his own mother, then no one is truly immune. Janice's testimony is not just a legal turning point. It's a cultural one. It challenges the myths we build around power and family. It asks hard questions about what loyalty really means. And it forces a reckoning, not just in the courtroom, but in every boardroom, studio, and mansion where secrets have been traded for silence. As her voice enters the record, even in private, it echoes across a nation still grappling with the cost of complicity. This is no longer just the Diddy trial. It's the Janice Combs story, too. And it's a story that reminds us even the quietest voices can carry the weight of truth. Even the most broken hearts can be the ones to break the silence. And when they do, they change everything. The story of Janice Combs is no longer just about a mother trying to protect her son. It's now a portrait of someone who found the strength to speak when silence was no longer bearable. It's about how power, fear, and loyalty can twist into something toxic, something that keeps secrets buried and justice delayed. But more than anything, it's about what happens when that silence finally breaks. Janice's journey through grief, denial, fear, and ultimately confrontation has not only become a pivotal part of one of the most shocking celebrity trials in recent memory, it's also reshaping how we think about accountability, especially within families and systems that thrive on loyalty over truth. From Harlem to Hollywood, Janice was there for it all. She raised a son in the shadow of tragedy and watched him rise to global fame. She supported him in public, even as her heart pulled away in private. And when the world began to turn against him, when the headlines changed from music mogul to criminal defendant, she didn't immediately speak. She didn't rush to defend, nor did she rush to condemn. She waited, likely torn by guilt, fear, and a lifetime of being taught that a mother's job is to protect. But when she finally spoke, she didn't just change the narrative, she cracked it wide open. Her statement, short but loaded, revealed what many had long suspected, that behind Diddy's empire of glamour and success was a darker story, one rooted in manipulation, coercion, and unchecked power. Her admission that she had warned him, that she had seen things no one else had, took the trial from a legal fight to a moral reckoning. And in doing so, it reframed Janice not as a passive observer, but as someone wrestling with the very foundation of who her son had become. The most chilling part of her journey wasn't just what she saw, but what she endured while trying to live with that knowledge. The journal entry from 2017, now infamous among prosecutors, told of frightened girls, tunnel systems, assistants who said nothing, and a mother who feared speaking out because she, too, was afraid. Afraid of losing everything. Afraid of tearing down the illusion of success she had helped build. Afraid of admitting that the boy she once held in her arms might be the man countless women now accuse of destroying their lives. And yet, despite that fear, she made the choice to speak, to say enough. That decision didn't come without a cost. Publicly, Janice has been both scrutinized and sympathized. Online, she's become a flashpoint in debates about complicity and motherhood. Was she part of the cover-up or another victim of it? Did she enable, or was she trapped by the same system that protected her son? These aren't questions with easy answers, but they are questions that matter. Because they force us to look beyond the courtroom and into the quieter, more painful realities of power and family. For the legal system, Janice's involvement may prove critical. Her testimony, even if sealed, adds emotional weight to a case, already heavy with disturbing evidence. It humanizes the horror. It turns statistics into stories. And for the jury, her words may become the emotional anchor, the moment where the evidence becomes undeniable because it's being told not by a stranger, but by a mother who once stood by her son and can no longer do so in good conscience. But beyond the law, beyond the courtroom, Janice's decision to finally speak carries a cultural ripple that's hard to measure. It challenges the way we understand celebrity. It confronts the idea that success can excuse anything, and it calls into question how many others are still silent, how many people, in similar situations, are holding back because they're afraid of what the truth might destroy. That's why her story resonates. Not because she's perfect, not because she has all the answers, but because she finally did something that many never do. She told the truth. She admitted what she had seen, what she had felt, what she had feared. And in doing so, she gave permission for others to do the same. In the weeks since her statement, insiders have come forward, former staffers have started speaking, and the legal system is beginning to unspool a narrative that had been carefully protected for decades. And yet, even now, as the case against Diddy continues to unfold, there's still a quiet, painful dignity in Janice's presence, or more often her absence. She's not appearing on talk shows. She's not giving interviews. She's not turning her pain into publicity. Instead, she remains quiet, reflective, perhaps still trying to reconcile the son she raised with the man now facing some of the most serious accusations in modern entertainment history. That's not weakness. That's strength, the kind of strength that comes only when you've lost everything and decide to stand up anyway. As for what comes next, no one knows. The legal process will take its course. More testimonies will be heard. More evidence will be reviewed. But no matter the verdict, one thing is clear. The truth has already started to come out. And Janice Combs, reluctantly, painfully, has become one of its most important voices. This isn't just about guilt or innocence anymore. It's about reckoning. It's about a mother who, after decades of being in the background, stepped forward not for herself, not even for her son, but for the women whose cries she finally couldn't ignore. And maybe that's the most powerful part of all, because when a mother speaks not just out of love, but out of justice, that's when the world starts to listen. And now, as the trial continues, as more layers are pulled back and more truths are revealed, the story of Janice Combs stands as a testament to the power of speaking up, even when it's too late to fix the past. Because speaking up isn't just about changing outcomes. Sometimes, it's about changing the way the story gets told. And in doing so, changing what we demand of ourselves, of each other, and of the systems that continue to protect power at any cost. Janice's voice may not undo what's been done, but it might just make sure it never happens again. This isn't just the downfall of a music mogul. It's the rise of a truth long buried beneath fame, silence, and fear. Janice Combs didn't just speak out. She gave a voice to every mother who's ever questioned their silence, and to every victim who thought no one would believe them. And now, the world is listening. If this story moved you, made you think, or even made you feel uncomfortable, that's the point. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done in her place? If you believe truth should never be silenced, hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into the stories the world tries to forget, and share this video. Because silence has ruled for too long, and today, that ends.